Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis and welcome to this video lesson. We're going to be talking about the repetition structure in Visual Basic. And so the best thing for me to do is to give you an illustration. So let me go over here to my drawing program and let me draw a racetrack. So let's say, for example, my little boy and I, we used to love playing slot cars. And he would set up a track that looked like this, and we would have a counter. And the counter would start off with 0, 0 for his track and 0, 0 for my track. And we would say ready, set, go. And then if my car went all the way around the track, then this 0, 0 would become 0, 1. And then if I'd go around the track again, that 0, 1 becomes a 0, 2, and so forth and so on. So this counter, let me go over here and type in the word counter, would increment. And it would increment every time that I would go around over and over and over again. So if the counter was equal to 0, it would now be worth 1. And then if it was 1, it would go to 2, and so forth and so on. What do we call this? We call this incrementing. Incrementing, right? To increase the value. Now, in general, we say incrementing means incrementing by 1 or increasing the value by 1. But it could be that incrementing maybe increases by 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the number is. The idea is that the number is getting bigger when we increment. Well, then decrementing means that it's getting smaller. So if we say decrement a particular value, then what that means is it's getting smaller. So we're going from 2 to 1 to 0, say for example. All right? So that's how this concept of incrementing and decrementing work. In Visual Basic, you would do something like this. You would say x is equal to x plus 1. That's an incrementing statement. For decrementing, you would say y is equal to y minus 1. This is a decrementing statement. All right, so let me explain this. First of all, let me go ahead and select all this and delete it. And so I can explain it like this. When you are incrementing, so say for example, if I take someone's age, let's say that I have a variable called age, and we're at their birth date. So what happens is they are going to increment by 1 on their birth date, their age. So if they're 49, well, now they're going to be 49 plus 1, which is 50. And then the next year, that 50 goes to 51, and 52, and 53 for the next year, so forth and so on, okay? So that's an incrementing statement. The way that this works out is as follows. This is the old value right here. This is the old value of age. This over here is the new updated value of age. So the way it works out is as follows. For the increment operator, for the assignment operator, we read this from right to left. So this is saying the following. Take the person's age, add 1 to it, and now the new updated version of age is 1 more than what it was before. So if this is 49, it's now 50. If this is 50, it's now 51. If this is 51, it's now 52, so forth and so on. So the right-hand side of the assignment operator represents the old value of that particular variable, and on the left-hand side, it represents the new updated value of that particular variable. Okay, so that's how incrementing works, and this is very important because we're going to be using this inside of our repetition structure. And the first repetition structure that I'm going to talk about or teach you is the while statement. And the while statement just simply asks a question. While this is the case, then we're going to continue on. My kids are constantly asking me, hey, are we there yet? Are we at Grandma and Grandpa's house? No. Hey, while we're on the freeway? No, we're obviously not at Grandma and Grandpa's house. Stop asking me. But they're going to keep on asking me. Why? Because that's what kids do. By nature, kids like the repetition structure, which basically means they're going to ask this question again and again and again and again. And finally, when we reach our destination, which is Grammy and Grandpa's house, hey, they're not going to ask me that question anymore. Okay, so that's how the while statement works. It's a repetition structure. It's based on asking a question over and over and over again. As long as this Boolean expression, or as long as this predicate has not been fulfilled, then we keep on doing this over and over again. Or maybe I should say it this way. While this is true, right? So we call this the Boolean expression. Now, we got to be careful about the way that we ask Boolean expressions. Well, maybe I shouldn't say we got to be careful. I'm just saying there are several ways of asking a Boolean expression, and some ways are affirmative, and some ways are non-affirmative or the negative. So, for example, if I said, "Hey, would you like to go out to lunch?" That's different than "Would you not like to go out to lunch?" One is affirming, and the other one is like a negating, right? Asking the not to see if that's true. So you can do that kind of stuff instead of a Boolean expression. While this is true, keep doing this. While this is not the case, you can say something like that as well. As long as this expression is true, you just keep on doing this over and over and over again. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio because I have a program to give you a demonstration how this works out. So first of all, let me start the program. And here we are. It says enter a whole number. Okay, so I'll enter the number 5. So you see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is displayed. The idea of this very simple program is just to display numbers from 1 all the way up to whatever the user number is. So if I entered the number 10, say for example, so we're going to write numbers from 1 through 10 because we're writing numbers from 1 to all the way up to the user number. How do you do something like this? Notice that we have a number with spaces in between. Okay, let me go back over here to the program and take a look at this. So first of all, I'm creating 3 variables. User number, I'm creating a counter, and I'm creating an output variable that's a string. And that's what's going to eventually contain the numbers with the spaces in between them. Well, the first thing I've got to do is to get the user input. And so I do that with this statement where I'm getting whatever the text property is for this particular text box. So in other words, what is inside of this text box? Whatever that is, I've got to get that number and convert that into a whole number. Once I've converted that to a whole number, then I can assign that to user number, which over here is an integer. Okay, so now that I have that, let me establish my counter. Well, I can establish my counter at whatever I want. I can establish it at 0, at -1, at 1. I can establish it at whatever. Okay, in this particular case, I'm starting it off at 1, and it's no surprise because when I run my program, you'll notice that if I enter a number over here, what's the first number? It's 1. Now, I could have had the first number start at 0 or at some other value, but in this case, I had to start off at 1, and that kind of gives you a clue as to why I have the counter set to 1. It's because I want to start counting from 1 all the way up to the user number. Okay, so I've established my counter, and I'm establishing a while statement over here. While this thing is true, we keep on looking. Do you see the behavior right here? We do this over and over and over and over again as long as this Boolean expression is true. Okay, so what am I saying? As long as the counter is less than or equal to the user number, then we do the loop body. The stuff inside here, that's called the loop body. It's after the while statement and before and while. Everything in between here, we call that the loop body. We're going to execute this first and then this second as long as this thing is true. Okay? Well, what am I going to do? In this case, I'm taking the old output, which it looks like it's blank. I'm going to concatenate that with a space, and then I'm going to concatenate that with the counter. All right, so let me switch back and forth over here so I can kind of keep track of what's going on. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw this table so I can keep track. It looks like I've got counter, and I also have, let me switch back over here. It looks like I have output. Okay, so I'll just do something like this. I have output, and I also have whatever the user number is. So we'll just say user num. All right, and it looks like at the beginning of the program, I'm asking for the user number. Let's say that the user says, I want 3 numbers. So they enter the number 3. So user number is 3. Looks like counter is being assigned 1, so I'll put a 1 over here. All right, the output, as you can see, is blank, so I'm just going to leave that blank. All right, now the counter is start off at 1. Did I put 1 already? Yes, I did. All right. While 1 is less than the user number. What is the user number 3? Is 1 less than 3? Yes, it is. So this is a true statement. Since that's a true statement, let's now go into the loop body and execute it. What are we doing? Well, we are going to assign something to the output. It looks like it's the old value of the output that's being assigned to the new value of the output. What is the old value of the output? It's blank. Okay, so that's why we have this over here. So it looks like we're going to take that, we're going to concatenate that with a space. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just use this as a representation of space. And it looks like we're concatenating that with the value of counter. Well, what is the value of counter? It looks like it's a 1. So it looks like space and a number 1 is put into this output variable. Next thing, what are we doing? It looks like we're incrementing the value of counter. So counter, whatever it is, add 1 to it. Okay, so whatever it is, add 1 to it. So now this is going to be the number 2. All right, so we're finished with this first iteration, or this first lap. Let's go back to the top and ask a question. Shall we do this again? Well, while the counter is less than or equal to user number, then yes. All right, let's see. Is counter less than or equal to user number? Yeah, 2 is less than or equal to 3. Since this is a true statement, we're going to execute this statement now. Well, what does this do? This is going to update output. It's going to take the old value of output, which is this, and it's going to concatenate a space. Okay, so let's do this over here. It's going to concatenate a space. Here's the space. And it's also going to concatenate the value of counter. What is the value of counter? Well, it was 1, but now it's 2. So it's going to put a 2 over here. So output is now being assigned a new item, namely space 1, space 2. Now, of course, we wouldn't see these symbols. I'm just using that to indicate that there's a space in between those two. All right. Next, we're going to increment counter. What does that mean? Take the value of counter, increase it by 1. This is the old value of counter. This is the new updated value of counter, 1 greater. Well, counter is 2. Now it's going to be 3. Okay, so we go back over here to the top and we ask a question. Shall we do this again? Are we going to go for another lap? Well, as long as the counter is less than or equal to user number, then yes. Let's see. Is the counter less than or equal to the user number? Well, it's not less than, but it certainly is equal to. So this is a true statement. Since that's true, we go into the loop body and we execute the first statement, which says take the value of output, concatenate that with a space. Okay, so take the value of output, which is this. So I'll just rewrite it over here. And it looks like we're supposed to concatenate a space. Okay, so here's a space. And we concatenate that with the counter. Well, what is the counter? Yeah, it looks like it's 3. So I'll put a 3 over here. All right. Next, we're going to execute this statement, which is an incrementing statement. It takes the value of counter and it increases it by 1. Oh, let me see here. It's now 3, so now it's going to go to 4. Okay. And so we are finished with this lap. The question that I have for you is, shall we do this again? Well, as long as counter is less than or equal to user number, then yes. Well, let's see. Is counter less than or equal to user num? Is counter less than or equal to user num? No. 4 is not less than or equal to 3. So we are finished with this while statement. Watch this. We go from here to here. Did you see how we jumped out of the while loop? So, hey, here's a merry-go-round, right? This thing is spinning, 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 spinning. Someone decides to jump off because of some reason. So now we are no longer inside of that merry-go-round. We're not looping anymore. We are outside of that. What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to take the value of output and put it into the text property of the label. In other words, display the result over here. All right, well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take the value of output, which is 1 space 2 space 3, and display it on the label. So if I run the program, and if I say 3, then 1, 2, and 3 are displayed, just like we have over here. 1, 2, and 3 are displayed, because that's what this while statement does. It just simply increments the number and displays them one by one on the output. Okay, so that's a very gentle introduction to the repetition structure using a while statement. There are really 3 components of this particular while statement. What is the initial value of the counter? What is the Boolean expression in reference to that counter? And then how is that counter being updated? So there's 3 parts, as you can see here. If you miss this part right here, that's really bad. In fact, let's talk about this. Let's see what happens if I take this, and I'm going to hit delete on the keyboard. So I'll take this guy over here, and I'm going to press delete. Okay, what happens? Well, let's see. Counter, which is 1, is that less than or equal to 3? Yes, it is. So take the output, put a space to it, and put the value of counter, which in this case is 1. Go back over here. Is 1 less than or equal to 3? Yes. Take the output and concatenate to it a space and the value of 1, because that's what counter is. Go back over here. Is 1 less than or equal to 3? Yes. Is 1 less than or equal to 3? Yes. Is 1 less than or equal to 3? Yes. I think you are starting to see what the problem is. We are going to be looping through this thing forever. What do we call that? We call that an infinite loop. An infinite loop. In other words, this thing just keeps on going on and on and on and on forever because there was no criteria. Hey, let me hit Control Z to undo. Hey, that was a dumb thing to get rid of this. Because what I need is I need something to change from lap to lap to lap, from loop iteration to loop iteration. I need something to change. Namely, I need the counter to be incremented. Otherwise, I'm never going to be able to jump out of this while statement. So you got to be really careful and make sure that you include all three ingredients for the while statement. Namely, you need a starting value for a counter. You need to make sure that that's going to be compared to some value, and then you need to either increment or decrement it based on whatever it is that you're doing. Those are the three components of a while statement. So a while statement is an example of a repetition structure, and a repetition structure helps you to do a process over and over and over again. All right, so this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.